Hey, y'all, welcome back to a Friday, September 13th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, Part 2. If you missed it, you can still watch a Pod Divided, the college football, Tennessee, and Georgia show that we do twice a week with Matt Green, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. So we got a special two-parter here for you guys today because we've got former Tennessee assistant football coach Doug Mathews and host of the Big Orange Sunday here on today's program. It was awesome getting to talk with Doug about all things Tennessee football. We talk about Nico Iamaleava and how he's looked thus far. We talk about Tim Banks' defensive evolution. We talk about the 3-3-5 that NC State threw at Tennessee. On Saturday, we talk about Boo Carter and why he looks like a future star at the star position, and a little bit of the Vols defensive line, Keenan Peely, and that tenacious front seven that has wreaked havoc through 2 weeks here in this young 2024 college football season. So all that and more coming up next with Doug Mathews, first timer on this very show. Don't forget, folks, you can watch this program on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe there if you have not already done so. Over 2,100 subs and growing more and more each and every day on our YouTube channel. So if you'd prefer to watch this show, you can do so on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff every day on the YouTube channel. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcasts. If you're listening to us today on the audio format, first, thank you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of this daily Tennessee Vols sports podcast. You can also help the show in a very easy way. Hit that pause button right now and leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow a little bit more each and every day. Tell a friend, family member, coworker, whoever about the Chase Thomas Podcast and everything we've got cooking here. If you are a fan of this very program, you can learn more about the show at chasethomaspodcast.com and check out past episodes and everything we've got cooking here each and every day on Knoxville's #1 independent Tennessee Vols podcast. You can also read me over there at TPL Tennessee, the Players Lounge Tennessee, talking or writing about all things Tennessee athletics. So if you'd also like to read my columns and work and that front, you can do so very easily by checking us out over there at TPL Tennessee. All right, Uncle Dare.
The Chase Thomas Podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I am now joined by a first-timer, former Tennessee football assistant coach, host of the Big Orange Sunday, Doug Mathews. Doug, good morning. How are you?
Chase, doing well today. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How do you feel about the night games against, let's just say, inferior sounds a little harsh, but night games again in games where, let's just say, we're not really concerned if Tennessee is going to come away with a victory here. How do you feel about waiting all day for a late Tennessee game in this kind of context?
Well, high school, some places, I've always loved that game. Why? It's a little different. I think a lot of coaches, maybe players, would tell you that the earlier the better. But I enjoy them, and I enjoy them as a fan too, sitting in the stands. Normally, you don't have to worry too much about the weather, the hot weather at least. But I like them. I do. I always have. I'll be going to a high school game tonight, as a matter of fact. So I enjoy night ball games.
Okay. Are you going to see George McIntyre? Or are you going to? Who are you seeing tonight? If you don't mind.
No, I've seen George several times, but I'm going to go to Montgomery Bell Academy and Christ Presbyterian Academy. Big game over at Big Red Field at NBA.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, there's a lot we could still talk about here. And through 2 weeks, Doug, I wanted to pick your brain. Firstly, on Nico, has he been just about as good as you anticipated from what you saw in the bowl game to what you've heard in the offseason? And now through 3 starts, we know how much Tennessee has obviously outscored opponents in these 3 games. He threw his first 2 picks. First one was his fault. Second one wasn't. Getting hit as he threw against NC State. But what has he been as good as anticipated for you? And also, what are some lingering questions you still want to see answered when it comes to Nico Iamaleava?
Chase, I've mentioned several times on my shows over here I go back to 1980. That was my first year as an assistant coach up there, and I've really followed Tennessee closely ever since then. I'm not saying I don't want to put this in the context of being who's better, but he certainly, in all that period of time, is the most athletic quarterback that I've seen at Tennessee, with all of the other intangibles. The closest thing athletic-wise that I can remember or have seen was Tony Robinson back in the 84-85 season. Very similar players as the way they played, but this young man's he's got a head on his shoulders. I've been fortunate enough to watch 4 or 5 practices and a couple of 3 scrimmages since he's been there going into last year. He looks to me like the total package. He can run the ball. He can puts a lot of, I'll tell you this from being an old defensive coordinator, he puts an awful lot of pressure on a defensive coordinator and how you're going to defense him, because he is quite capable of pulling the ball down, as we've seen, and pick up a significant yardage. It reminds me a lot, and again, I don't like comparing players, but he's much like Hendon Hooker was, that type of player at least.
Yeah, it feels like Hendon Hooker with just a little, like Hendon Hooker, I've written about it, I've talked about it a lot over the years, is Hendon Hooker has made all of this possible. I don't know if you agree, Doug, but without Hendon Hooker, and Tennessee got really lucky there. It's interesting to think, like, what if Hendon Hooker leaves in the spring after Pruitt moves on, because he's not a Heupel guy originally. What does all of this look like if it's only Joe Milton for the last 3 years here? I think things look a lot different potentially. And where Tennessee is at right now, I think Hendon Hooker deserves a bunch of credit for starting this and getting Tennessee to this point where they just have blue chip quarterback after blue chip quarterback, and they're rolling on all cylinders. I look at it and I think about Nico and the Hendon stuff. It seems to me the difference is Nico, when things broke down, and I wonder if you see this too, Hendon was really, really good, especially in the Florida and Alabama game, of getting 7 yards with his legs when things broke down. Nico, when things break down in the pocket, he stands firm. He'll take some shots, and he's still keeping his eyes up and is very comfortable throwing off platform. He's comfortable throwing to the hashes on the run, more so than I think Hendon was. Hendon, great accuracy on the deep ball, didn't throw many picks at all. But I think Nico, it seems like the difference in the final skill set that he has that Hendon didn't get to at Tennessee is just he's able to still keep his eyes down and make a big time throw with his legs when things break down. I think that's just a little bit different. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, and a couple things to remember too. Let's go back to your comment about transfer quarterbacks. Josh Heupel has won 29 games, I believe, at Tennessee now. 26 of those were won by transfer portal quarterbacks, Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker. So certainly Tennessee and Coach Heupel has benefited greatly from the transfer portal rule. As far as, but the other thing to remember about Hendon too was he came in with 20 or 30, 20, 25 or so start. So he was an experienced quarterback in a very good league when he was at Virginia Tech. So I think this young man's going to get better and better. He is. I think it's very good that 2 of these first 3 ball games have been against teams that, quite frankly, you should be able to perform very well. And of course, next week we're going to find out a little bit more about him and this team when they go out to Oklahoma.
When you saw the 3-3-5 stack that Tony Gibson runs for NC State, as a defensive guy, Doug, what makes that hard for opposing offenses, and why do you think it makes it hard for offenses like Josh Heupel's? But they were able to exploit it, but it was something that previously Josh Heupel did struggle with when he was at Mizzou and faced Tony when he was at West Virginia. What about that stack makes it complicated for opposing offenses?
Well, it gives, I wouldn't say it's more complicated, because you basically can either go with a 3-man front or a 4-man front. Tennessee's a 4-man front. But the reason that people run the 3-man front, 3-3-5, is to be able to get, they can dial up more different types of pressures, because they have people, they only have three on the line of scrimmage. So the remaining of the players can bring blitzes from different angles. It's what Georgia runs and what Alabama runs. Now, Georgia and Alabama run with a little bit better players, certainly. But I think that's one of the reasons why you saw in the North Carolina State game, which runs that defense. That's why Tennessee went to a good bit of 2 more tight ends, two tight ends a lot more. The thing is, I coached the 4-3 and coached against the three-man front. So, it's whatever best fits your personnel. But the thing now is so many people run it. So many people run both of them that good offensive coordinators know how to attack it. Now, whether they're good enough to attack it, that's something else. I thought that was one thing in this ball game. By the way, we noticed that the first ball game, Tennessee ran very little too tight end with both tight ends in the ball game. Against NC State, they did a lot of the game with both tight ends, and it was because to be able to pick up a little bit better against the run, and that's why they ran the ball so effectively on it. Every defense, just like every offense, has strengths and weaknesses. The weakness or the way that offenses are going to attack a 3-3-5 is running the football, because you have smaller players in there that have to line up over those tight ends. So you get a little mismatch in there. And I think that's one reason why Tennessee was able to run the ball so very, very well against NC State.
Interesting. As a defensive guy, one of the things that I think Tennessee fans still struggle with a little bit, and they were kind of struggling with it that first drive with KC Concepcion and North Carolina State, Tennessee struggled in the first couple of years of getting off the field on third down. And it was more third and long. I think Tennessee's a lot better in third and short, just because teams, if you try and run up, there was a fourth down stop where Grayson called a quarterback sneak and he gets stuffed. And Tennessee's front seven is just unbelievable right now. But one of the things that I think has frustrated fans over the last 4 years has been getting off the field on third down in big time moments. And that didn't really come up last week after that first drive from NC State. What about Tim Banks' style? Do you think that's a choice where you're like, we're not giving up anything big, we're not going to play off, we're not going to play press man with our corners, we don't, it's just stylistic? Is it a roster choice? Just we don't have the guys that we feel comfortable enough to leave out on an island in that manner to kind of ensure that we can't. But I look at it this year, I think this is the best two corners Tennessee's had to this point in the Banks game with Gibson and Jermod. And Jermod McCoy had, I think, an outstanding game against NC State. But what do you see there when third and long comes up and Tennessee struggles to get off the field?
Well, first off, Coach Banks inherited a roster, a defensive roster. The offensive roster was better when Coach Heupel came in and Coach Banks came with him. But in secondary in particular, which that was my area, along with being a coordinator, that was the area I coached, was secondary. Quite frankly, he didn't have the type of talent athletes back there to play a whole lot of man coverage. He does now. Just think about this case. The top 6 players off last year's secondary are no longer there. They didn't come back this year. Now, one came back and then was injured at the start of the season. So they're playing really with 5, and it's a five defensive back scheme with 5 basically new players. 4 of those players, if Gibson is starting at cornerback, the other 4 of those players are transfer portal players. 3 this year, last year, a couple of years ago in T-Lander. But they're more athletic. They can play more man coverage. I think you're going to see them play more man coverage. That's the scheme that Coach Banks would like to run, but he was unable to run that. So I agree with you 100% that this is a much more athletic secondary. Now, we're going to see as we get into the really good teams how they're going to be able to play. But I like this group a lot. It's got a little depth problem, which every team has a depth problem in some area. That's probably going to be on the defense at the cornerback position this year. But the big takeaway is it's a much more athletic team that allows Coach Banks to do many more things that he would like to do that he's been unable to do, because of the personnel he puts out there. You can only call what your defensive players are able to do from an athletic standpoint. And again, this is a very athletic group back there right now with some experience.
I like it. As a secondary guy, Doug, what have you seen? Because we haven't seen really a true freshman get a lot of snaps like Boo Carter has gotten through 2 weeks. I was telling Rocky Top Insider's Ryan Shumpert earlier this week, where in my notes in these games and watching him back, Boo is someone who just pops off the tape. Like he's going to be in the wrong place sometimes. He had one play where he was behind and NC State he took a bad angle and NC State got a 25-yard reception out of it, a crosser over the middle. But he's also going to fly. Like he's just fearless. And I don't think you see that a lot from true freshmen. And I think it shows a lot that Tim Banks trusts Boo Carter to this extent right out of the gate. What have you seen? Because it seems like it's going to be an up and down, and we're going to see some brilliant plays from him. And we're also going to see he might get beat a couple times because he is one of the more aggressive, confident stars that Tennessee's had in the Tim Banks era.
Well, I watched Boo play. He's from Chattanooga. I watched him play Chattanooga, and I've also watched him in a few practices and in a scrimmage or two in Knoxville. A lot of talent. I can assure you that Coach Banks would just as soon. He is also the secondary coach. He and Coach Nez Martinez. He'd probably like not to start a freshman, but he's the best. Now, Jordan Thomas getting hurt certainly moved Boo up there, but he was going to be a player. Probably going to be a return force all said and done. Got a lot of talent, and depending on how you want to characterize it, he's either tremendously confident or cocky. And let me just say this: those are not bad. You as I used to tell every player, if you don't think you're the best player on the field, you don't need to be out there playing, whether you are or not. But a lot of talent, and I've been impressed with how quickly he plays that star position, the nickel position, and there's I don't know if it's the toughest position to play, but at that position you got to be able to play the run. You have to be able to play the pass, and you're usually going up in that slot receiver against one of the better, quicker receivers, a Squirrel White type, but just from watching him, I've been really impressed with the young man. More importantly, this staff's been very impressed with him, and I think you're going to continue to see him get better and better and better as the more games and more snaps he gets.
Absolutely. Final one here for you, Doug. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this Tennessee front seven is one of the best in the country. Keenan Peely has popped. I think we thought he was going to be solid, but Keenan Peely is just really good. He had that awesome block on that pick six from Will Brooks. He's tackled great in space. Aaron Carter is just a man. He hits hard. Aaron Carter is just different at that linebacker spot. You mentioned T-Lander. He seems like he's going to be ready to plug and play once Peely moves on after this year. William Inge is off to a great start with that linebacker room. He's rotating a lot, just like Brian John Murray last year. But when you look at this front seven and what Tennessee is rotating here, especially on the defensive line and at linebacker, is this the best you've seen in how long? Because, obviously a defensive guy, you watched a lot of Tennessee football teams. And to me, I know I'm a little bit younger in this, but I just go back and I mean, it seems like this in my lifetime, maybe the late 90s, early 2000s with some John Henderson stuff, Leonard Little, there's a little bit there, but I just look at how deep they are, and I don't know if they've been this deep in my lifetime.
Well, first off, let's start with their coach up front. Rodney Garner, I think, is not only the defensive line, he is one of the best assistant coaches because he's a coordinator. He would probably be a good coordinator that I know. But a couple of things there. You mentioned Peely. I think there's five players on this defensive front, and then put Peely in there that are 24, 25 years old. They've been around a long time. There's a lot of veteran experience there. They've been with Rodney Garner for their entire career there. And the thing that Rodney does is he really gets the most out of them. He plays a lot of players, and all that pays off. But Peely, sometimes, Chase, you just get fortunate as a coach. Peely, if he doesn't get hurt last year, he's not there this year.
Yeah.
So they're playing probably with two sophomore linebackers or two second-year linebackers. But he is back, and you're right. I'm sure he wants to have a big year. He's very talented. He's smart. He's a guy that's played a lot of football out of BYU. It's an experience, and that it's kind of like in almost any business, but football's a lot like business. Experience really helps you in your profession. Sometimes in a bad way, but most time in a good way. This is an experienced front, offense and defense. I think between the offensive line and the defensive line, which are 10 starters, I think there are 11 fifth-year players. So that brings a lot of experience who played an awful lot of football in the Southeastern Conference. So, there's some things that certainly Tennessee has to get better at. There's some areas they need to improve on, but this is a team that has the potential, I think, to be special. And a lot of that is because of that guy under center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of our good years going back, if not all, you've had somebody under center who's a difference maker. Whether it be T. Martin or Peyton Manning or Tony Robinson, or Andy Kelly, those guys all were talented players who could make plays for you on offense.
I love it. Doug, what can the good folks check out from you this week over at Big Orange Sunday and everywhere else?
Well, I'm on in Nashville live at 8 to 9. All my shows are podcasts on CoachDougMathews.com, 1T and Matthews. And I do a Saturday show also, but I'll be watching a lot of football, as I'm sure you will.
Absolutely. Enjoy it, Doug, and keep up the great work, sir. And we'll have to check back in again soon.
All right, Chase. Take care. Good luck to you.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.